Tatsunoko vs. Capcom. To this day, I will never forget the first showing of it back in the late 2000s. A Capcom fighter that was console exclusive to us Wii owners while the other consoles had Street Fighter 4 to themselves, even if they crossed over with a brand I had never heard of at the time, being Tatsunoko Production, and being initially disappointed that it wasn't going to come out in the West due to licensing issues. Until Tatsunoko and Capcom announced that there would be a Western release, albeit with a different title and some needed alterations to bypass said legal rights issues. But in any case, we Yanks and even Europe were getting the game, released in each region on the release dates of Mass Effect 2, weirdly enough. But in any case, how does Capcom's more cult installment of their crossover series fare? Let's find out. Despite still having ending sequences for each character, there is not much a story to talk about beyond Capcom's universe crossing over with another, so we're jumping straight to the gameplay. And Tatsunoko vs. Capcom is a 2.5D fighter where, in contrast to the prior Versus titles, Capcom and Aiding, yes, that same Aiding whose Naruto games I reviewed earlier, uses a 2-on-2 fighting system instead of 3-on-3. But like prior Versus titles, one knockout doesn't end your match. Also, unlike prior Capcom fighters, the game's gameplay was aimed by Capcom to be more pick up and play, which is probably why Aiding were likely hired to develop the game given their history with anime licensed titles. But unlike those prior titles, the fighting system still plays very much in line with Capcom's prior work. Known changes being the controls. In the arcades, instead of a 6-button scheme, it's now 4, and moves are a little more simplified, though in the Wii version, should you play with a GameCube controller or a classic controller, you can work with more buttons as an aid, and now the attacks are reduced to 3 between light, medium, and strong. Even the special moves like Hadouken and Soul Fist are easier to pull off. Heck, in the default controls, if you're a more casual fighting game fan like I am because I like martial arts media, you sometimes pull off the bigger special moves without even knowing, at least in contrast to prior fighting games. And as you should expect from Capcom, it works great, even with the GameCube controller, which Aiding knows how to work with, but I still feel playing with a classic controller Pro, or hell, if you were lucky enough to get that limited edition arcade stick, are the better ways to go. But what's a fighting game without its roster? Across both brands, Tatsunoko vs. Capcom has a total of at least 25 playable characters. On the Capcom side, you got 3 characters that appear in damn near every crossover, being Ryu, Chun-Li, and Morgan Island. Capcom decided to represent certain franchises they have a little differently. Like for Mega Man, while Roll from the OG series appears, they opted to go for Volna from Legends instead for a variant of the Blue Bomber. Zero from Mega Man X also appears. Besides the Mega Man series, you also got Alex from Street Fighter 3, Beautiful Joe in his second fighting game appearance, and Kaijin no Soki from Onimusha Dawn of Dreams, exclusive to the All-Stars version, Frank West from Dead Rising, and a more curious choice, a character named Saki from Quiz Nanario Dreams. It never released in the West. Meanwhile, on the Tatsunoko side, you got Joe the Condor, June the Swan, and Ken the Eagle, who all appeared in Science Ninja Team Gatchaman, localized as Battle of the Planets in the West. Karas, whose anime is the only thing from Tatsunoko that I have seen so far, at least as far as this game is concerned. 2 Tekkamen, the 2 Yattermen, and their villain Doronjo, though good luck getting many people to identify these characters in the West. In any case, it's an impressive roster for sure, especially if you're just learning about Tatsunoko, let alone digging into Capcom's archive. Now to go over the content, and while there are plenty unlockable art to buy in the in-game shop, as far as gameplay is concerned, it's the standard fighting game choices of arcade mode, which is the primary mode, a multiplayer component with the now shut down online service, survival, and time attack, which are fighting game standards. One standout, however, is an unlockable minigame, Ultimate All Shooters, where 4 characters, 2 from Tatsunoko and 2 from Capcom, were transitioned into the shoot-'em-up genre. Not a bad distraction, and it's akin to when Midway, now NetherRealm Studios, would add mini-games, especially in the Gen 6 titles in Mortal Kombat, where they would add other genres. Still, the main meat and potatoes is obviously the fighting, and as far as single-player content is concerned, it's all in the arcade mode for the unlockables, so I recommend playing in a couple short bursts a day. On to the visuals, and again, considering the Wii was obviously the weakest hardware for its time, Tatsunoko vs. Capcom employs a cel-shaded art style, which looks great, even on character models toned down compared to what's on HD hardware at the time. But the stages look absolutely gorgeous, quite colorful and well detailed. I seriously wonder how Willamette Parkview Mall stage from Dead Rising was able to fit so many zombies. Onto the sound, and the licensing issues make some pretty interesting choices. One is that the game is for the most part only in Japanese rather than a full-on English dub, with the exception of the narrator and Frank West, who do speak in English. In addition to that, the music, undoubtedly not from Tatsunoko's lineup, is the same reason we don't hear from Capcom either, even from classics from Ryu and Chun-Li. There is one exception though for Yami, the final boss from Okami, and his theme, which I learned when I finally played Okami after I first played Tatsunoko vs. Capcom. Regardless, not bad tracks by any means. To end, there is another thing the licensing issues brought. Besides replacing one character on the Tatsunoko side, the ending screens for arcade mode are all otherwise well-drawn stills. But if you did not import the cross-gen version for a modded Wii or a Japanese imported Wii, search what the endings look like in that version and it's fully animated. A bit of a disappointment, but I get it. Overall, Tatsunoko vs. Capcom is a great starting point for those who never played a Capcom fighting game before, courtesy of Aiding's work. And if you're a hardcore fan of either company, or hell, even just the Capcom side, it's worth a look. Even without knowing Tatsunoko, it's fantastic either way, and it's the best traditional fighting game on the Wii for a reason. So, before I was playing this again for the first time in years, I had a thought about its 2010 release for us Westerners in North America and Europe especially, as this was the first time learning what the hell a succubus was when I was introduced to Morgan Einsland through this game. It made me think, between the OG release in 2008 and other content that had released between then and the early mid-2010s, which includes a new Marvel vs. Capcom, this could have been the era of the succubus, while vampires were a big punchline. Speaking of, poor Dimitri, before it was cool to hate vampires, he gets the worst crossovers, in contrast to the succubus that turned out to be the more popular character. Isn't that something?